Good afternoon. Hello, this is Ramesh Krishnan here. Thank you for taking the time to watch my research project. The following presentation has been submitted to Dr. D as part of Organizational Change course. My presentation has an emphasis on Deluxe Corporation with their recent and past acquisitions in the small business space and go through some of the changes that have been done and how they managed and led the project to the success of organizational strategy. Here is a table of contents. We begin with an introduction, briefly talk about organization change and why a change is needed. Then the next we talk about hypothesis statement, the company overview, in my case, Deluxe Corporation, where I have been working for 20 years. The next topic is the literature review and methodology, limitations of the studies, suggestions, conclusions, and not last but not least, the recommendations. What's an organization change? Organizational change is the resulting alteration of the organization either through massive events such as corporate restructuring and replacement of personal or small scale changes in workflows and processes. Dawson said that. Organization changes are typically generated via accidentally or intentionally go through creative ideas that generate an innovation process. Leaders significantly change organizations they lead. What Butte meant change as turn organization in another direction, to fundamentally modify the way we do things, to overhaul the structure, the design of organization for decision making and accountability, and also to provide organizational members with a whole new vision. The process of implementing change in an organization usually begins with a process of innovation, diffusion, and a formal adoption and implementation. Here is the hypothesis statement. Hypothesis statement is the leadership influence on leading and managing transactional change to become a successful organization. And why a change is needed in an organization. Any business in today's fast moving environment that's looking for a change. Change is important for any organization because without change, business would likely to lose their competitive edge and fail to meet the needs of what most hope to be a growing base of loyal customers. Change is important in organizations to allow employees to learn new skills, new opportunities, and exercise their creativity in ways that ultimately benefit the organization through new ideas and increased commitments. Increasing pressures on organizations to be more competitive, agile, and innovative and customer focused is yet another reason for change. What are the questions that we should be asking during an organizational change? What forces are acting upon me? In other words, what are the pressures I should take into consideration as I decide what to change and how I should change it? Why do we want to change? How can I build a powerful and transformative case for a change? How should I motivate people and support the change? What are the resources readily available for the change and how I am going to utilize them to include and involve everyone that the change will affect? And last, should the changes be strategic and company wide or relatively limited? The next one, we talk about the types of organizational change. We learned many types of changes. Here I am going to present four changes, primarily unplanned, planned, transformational, and radical changes. One of the major differentiating traits of planned and unplanned change is the source of the change. Planned change occurs when leaders in the organization recognize the need for a major change and proactively organize a plan to accomplish the change. Planned change occurs when the management makes a conscious decision to implement new ideas in the organization. Unplanned change brings more disruption to the structure of an organization than planned change. Excuse me. Transformational change is, in other words, organizations that incur drastic change due to unexpected losses. It's a significant change due to supply and demand. The radical change is, in other words, change is a divergent to regain competitive advantage. Then this slide talk about the forces of change. Primarily the forces, people, process, technology, and external and internal forces. To achieve a successful transformation, an organization must clearly align its people, technology, and process with its future state mission strategy. What that means, employing proven tools and techniques to help guide clients and their employees through a large scale change and reducing the uncertainty that naturally occurs during this process. Proactive communication among internal and external stakeholders is essential to ensure agencies achieve the benefits of transformation. In people, part of the equation represents the user needs. The process side refers to the goals that must be considered from a business perspective to help drive a successful change. In the technology space, as we all know that, interestingly, the technology implementation side of the aspect and how we can increase cost, increase revenue, reduce cost, and how the ROI can be changed and all that aspects. Here are what are the external forces that we think that could impact and change or force the change. Social environments, economic factors, technology, global competition, and finally, the customers. Internal forces that happens within the organization, and that is, in other words, structure focused change, system dynamics, technology change, in meaning and a complete rewrap of the technology platform, process and policy changes, and the workforce changes. Those are the change items or attributes contributes the forces of the change. The next slide, it's about the company Deluxe overview. Deluxe is a 100 years old company started in 1915, headquartered in Shoreview, Minnesota. Lee Schramm is the CEO since April 2006. We have about 5,000 employees in US and Canada. Our annual revenue is about $1.8 billion. Here are the three core business units that our company is divided into: financial services, small business solutions, and direct checks. More than 1/3 of our revenue comes from small business, and we have about 4.5 million active business customers and 5,517 financial institution clients. We are expanding our 100 years of serving financial institutions, and we offer a broad set of solutions, including checks that help financial institutions build a lasting relationship and compete in today's changing environment. And direct checks is on the consumer side, and we are the nation's largest leading direct-to-consumer check suppliers. This is a continuation of the company overview. I am just bringing the two financial institutions and the small business space. What is our today's structure look like? Small business, primarily from personalized to printed products to logo design, web services, and search engine marketing that helps any small businesses, email marketing, etc. Financial institutions, on the other hand, being successful in today's financial arena, that means being flexible to the ever-changing customer demands and preferences of customer account holders. And the next we talk about Deluxe vision, mission, and the core values. Here, excuse me, our vision be the best at helping small business and financial institutions. Here is our shared values, which is teamwork, honesty, and respect to others, recognition and celebrate, incentiveness, value customers, and execute as a team. And our one of the large our leadership principles are listed at the bottom of the screen. And and our story, the next story is we are driven by a relentless passion for progress, evolving alongside our customers as they move forward with solutions that help small businesses and financial institutions grow. Let's talk about the SWOT analysis at Deluxe. So, SWOT analysis is an assessment of organizational strength, and it helps leaders to summarize the facts from external and internal analysis. This helps to address strategic issues that organization faces today. Some of the strengths that I like to highlight as part of this presentation: reputable brand name, product lines and services. We have a greater customer base and a top line check quality, and we are with a declining check, we are having a higher profitability business. And some of the weaknesses, Deluxe Check is not a low cost, and there are some always system constraints because it's a pretty old company, and a lot of legacy systems are in place that it's a kind of a systems constraints, and lack of management support is another reason. Then the organizational cultural values. Some of the opportunities that we think today to improve and grow, and we are growing constantly, like the sixth consecutive years, and Deluxe is growing, every year over year. And the business transformation, Deluxe is, digital transformation, as we all know that is a heated topic, and everybody wants to be in that space. And we have an increased customer base. That is our opportunity to how we expand our customer base so that we have we can support on the financial side as well as the small business side. And with the mobile technology, demand is getting increased day by day. The easy access, how we leverage our system so that it can be accessed easily. And the threats that I would like to highlight is, as you all know, that market competitors or increased fraud. That's, how do we protect our checks being, secure? And financial policy changes, those are some of the threats, and policy government changes that comes as, and there are some of the threats. So that's our SWOT analysis at this point. And here is the literature review case study. Excuse me. Organization changes all the time, each day and every day, as we all know that. Organizations are created and developed on an assumption of continuity, and we all work too hard and continue to survive and to sustain. Change is a prominent feature in open systems, as we learned that human beings and organizations are open systems as they consume energy from outside environments in order to sustain. The purpose of this presentation is to provide an accusation that resulted at Deluxe and the changes within organizations from a system, culture, and external customer perspective. So, in Q1 of 2015, Deluxe acquired Verify Valid to offer a secure online check payments to America's small business owners. This is an electronic form where you can send checks electronically. There is no manual intervention there. On August 4th of this year, Deluxe acquired a Georgia-based distributor, Inc. Head, founded in 2003, and they are the largest promotional products and the leading distributor in US. And Deluxe has an integration with Incred's products. And as part of this case study, the two case studies that I live about, the Incred is something that we have some of the open systems what we have today, order management systems. How do we leverage and bring those product lines into it so that we can increase, and when the customer come to that site, how we can get them attract and get more revenue and have serve with additional product lines. And the plan, this is a plan change that, and in addition, it's more on the transactional space of it. That means it's a planned management, planned acquisitions that align to our organization strategy. And so let's talk about how some of the leaders and the managers. We all know that executing a planned change or an organizational change that requires a lot of involvement from a leadership perspective and leaders or managers. So how they transform, and they play a very critical role during the change process. Here are the leaders are very innovative. At the same time, if you look at the managers, they are implementers, and leaders do the right thing. Managers do things right, and leaders are inspire, and managers compels. So then the leaders most likely are people oriented. Managers, on the other hand, are task oriented. So let's go to the how do we understand an organization change process, and what are the models that we have used, and why this organization model is so important for us. So this model represents a very simple and practical model for understanding the change process. Living the process change, living the process of the change entails that creating the perception a change is needed, then moving toward the new desired level of behavior, and solidifying the new behavior as the norm. The model is very widely used and serve as the basis for many modern organizational changes. Excuse me. Conceptually, I like to bring a very simple concept and an analogy. If you have a large cube of ice, but realize that when you want is a cone of ice, what exactly we all do? I mean, what we do, we melt the ice to make an amenable to change, which is the process unfreeze. Then what we do, we must mold the ice into water into a shape where we want to change. That is kind of the change where motivation move. Finally, we solidify the new shape, which is nothing but refreezing that. So to begin any successful change process, what we do, we must but start by understanding why the change must take place. Living conduct that in order to organizational change to be successful, the change has to follow the three process. Unfreeze stage. This is probably one of the most important stages to understand in the world of change. The first step of the process um, can take many forms and needed to be tailored as much as possible based on the situations. This demonstrates a need for a change, have proper data analysis to show the gap between what is and what would be better. So the next step of this process is a changing process that, in other words, take action to implement the desired change. This involves cognitive restructuring, identify the new model, and see things differently. Um, and then the next the final stage of the process is a refreeze process. It is not just the integration of the change. The rephrasing is in other words, people from new relationship has to be comfortable with their routines, etc. And finally, the output becomes okay. Did we achieve the expected relationship? So we talked about what are the model that can be used, or what we used in order to understand the organizational change process. Like I said, for both of these case studies, I was physically involved in terms of, from the project perspective to from the start to finish. I'm the application owner for that application. So when the system changes are involved in, so we need to make some changes to add more products, etc. So with that, this is the steps we have taken to understand the organizational change process. And let's talk about why organizational model is so important. It helps to categorize enhance the understanding, and it interprets the data about the organization and help to guide an action for a change. Next, I'd like to just briefly touch about the organizational change model. So here, these are the transactional factors. As we learned that there are transformational factors and transactional factors. Transactional factors, here are the typical involvements and the domains that are getting changed, like structure, management practices, and task, and etc. So in other words, transaction change is more aligned with the management. Leaders who see constant focus on improvements and quality. Structure as the organizational chart. In other words, the arrangement of how the organization is functioning or the organized or the departments. This signifies that level of responsibility, who is making the decision, who has the authority to make the decision, and the lines of communications and the relationship that lead to the change. Leaders or managers who carry out the organization strategy practices for specific behaviors. They take appropriate actions for each task. So let's talk about the systems. From a system perspective, these are concerned with the policies, procedures that are aligned. So this transactional model, change model tells that, okay, here are the changes that are most likely to happen, and here how they are related, how they are linked, and what impact or that are expected to be happening within each space. That's what this slide is pretty much telling about. So move on to the next one. Excuse me. So this is the organizational effectiveness model. Organizational diagnosis requires defining and using a pattern for understanding organizational problems. So the data collection and analysis and drawing conclusions based on the findings with the purpose of making necessary changes and probable modifications. For that, we need a framework or a tool that diagnose the changes that would help analyze, okay, what are the organizational behaviors, where the gaps are, how do we address the gaps. The beauty of this model is to provide an impact and then in assessment from an external environment. And so as you see, they are all linked and from input, and then the input becomes the output, and finally it comes out. So in mid 1970, Marvin Weisbord, an organizational design consultant, created his 6 boxes model, and as a diagnostic tool for organizational effectiveness. He possesses diagnostic questions for each box of this model and are surrounded by a circle that represents that external environments with an arrow pointing in both directions. So this model primarily focuses on the internal issues within organizations by posting the diagnostic questions, which have to do with the fit between what is and what should be. This model is also particularly useful when the consultant does not have as much as time as would be desirable for diagnosis. So here are some of the 6 boxes that we primarily talk about it. For each of those represents. So the first one being the purposes. How clear are organizational members knowing about the organization's purpose and the mission? And the next one is the structure. Structure primarily deals with how do we divide up the work. For the structure, the question is whether there is an adequate fit between the purpose and the internal structure that is supposed to serve that purpose. Relationship. How do we manage the conflict among people? This is one of the heavy on the people relationship side. Rewards. What does this organization formally reward, and for what to do an organization members feel that they are rewarded and punished? So the next one is the leadership box, which is something keeping the boxes in balance. So the other advantage of this box is this process model is leadership sits in the middle, which is the best thing. Leadership, it is central, and that the consultant believes that this is the primary job of the leader to watch for blips among other boxes and maintain a balance among them. And the last one box, helpful mechanisms. Have we adequate coordinating technologies, etc. So I, in my case, that we haven't successfully implemented or successfully used, but from some of the pieces that I believe that can have leverage, because, for example, rewards is the second accusation what we talked about primarily both that the product line, when the customer come into our systems and we are supposed to be giving commissions payments, and how that gets rewarded, and those needs to be all structured, and what the relationship, how do we identify that as a relationship to this, okay, this is a existing customer or a new customer, and all sorts of things. So this helped us to understand the effectiveness model. The next one, I just like to briefly talk about the best practices for managing the change. The managing the change isn't like operating a machine or treating the human body weakness at a time. The activities involve working with a fixed set of relationship. Managing the change has become a primary critical role, and that involves a huge amount of partnership to become successful. As we started out, managing change requires the managers juggle a host of psychological factors, how people think, how they perceive their current situations. Given that this is coming into, because when you are trying to integrate one small or bigger company into a smaller company, what is supposed to be happening? So there is always a change and the fear and the resistance. So, and someone could argue that, okay, what are the change that is going to happen, and what is getting impacted? So to ensure the success of any change initiative, managers should first go towards the considering how the people will perceive the change, plan and structure the communication strategy accordingly, and practicing the plan and share a power of strategy of change, and being proactive rather than reactive. Align people, technology, and process with its future state. Define clear focus on change and management activities. Focus one change at a time, and define effective management plan. So the next slide, this is about the how do you lead change. So this process, quarters 8-step process, be a perfect fit for our integration on those two case studies. So combined this quarter process into a three-stage, creating the climate for the change, and engage, then enable organizations and implement and sustain the change. So let's spend a couple more time on this to talk about in detail what are the each step of the process, how we believe that that process was very helpful in executing our case study. So the first step of Dr. Cotter observed that countless leaders and organizations, they were trying to transform or execute their strategies. So he identified the 8 success factors, combined them into a framework or a methodology. So the first step of the process is create a sense of urgency around the need for change. What we can do. I mean, we have to identify what are our potential threats, and what opportunities what we have, and understand the customer demands. So what basically from this perspective at Deluxe, we would like to be on the small business space to serve our customer demands by providing everything from web services and search engine marketing to affordable logo design, email marketing, business checks, business forms, printed products, etc. So Deluxe helps business owners stay focused on what they love. So that due to that, we wanted to acquire further smaller companies, and how we can integrate and offer a one single product, one single solution, one for all for our customers. So that is our vision. So the first step of the process, what we have done is, okay, create a sense of urgency. So this is really important. As check is in the declining process, how do we make our profit? How do we get our target revenue, etc.? So we need a mechanism. So we need a electronic check process. How do we improve our promotional products? So that both are the strategic initiatives that was introduced, and a sense of urgency needs to be in place in order to have get that happen. So the second step is a formal correlation. So in this often takes strong leadership and visible support from the key people within the organization. So managing change is not easy. So we have to live with it. So in this step of the process, identify the leaders and ask the emotional commitments from the key people that, and then build a team and who can lead this change. And the next step of the process is the critical, very important process, very important step of the process. Create a vision for change. So, as I said, that a clear vision that can help everyone understand why we are asking them to do something. Our vision from a Deluxe is a growth engine for small business in order to accomplish our opportunities to expand small business. Of course, Check is our core product for financial institutions and their customers. We are expanding our customer base in the small business sector as it's one third of our revenue come in. And so how do we do all those things? The vision change. So determine the values that are central to the change, create a strategy to execute that vision, ensure that the change can describe the vision in few minutes. So, and also, in addition, develop a short summary that captures what we see as the future state of our organization. So that's kind of the critical step within this process. And the fourth step process is how do we communicate that vision? So this is kind of enabling, okay, the changes that the organization is going through, and this is a critical step to give constant communications about the change and the vision. What do you do with our vision after we create, and it will determine the success. So primarily the you daily communication, vision daily, and use the daily vision to make decisions and solve problems. So, in other words, address people concerns and be open, be honest. Talk about the change emphasize the change. Talk about the change during meetings and during the quarterly meetings or the daily process. Here is the change we all want to be moving into that. How, and everyone be aware of that communication spread across the entire community, entire organizations within that. So for this case, leading the change, and we put up a communication plan, and that communication is a uh, the monthly communications that's going out to all the audiences, not only the people who are involved within the project or in the transformation integration phase, the people outside the organization. So here are the things that is coming up. Here is what we are doing at this stage, and this is where we want to be. So people understand, and that this is more critical to be in that state. And so if there are any concerns or any conflict, that needs to be addressed on the way. So that the awareness and the constant communication helped everyone to do a better job. And of course, the step. Fifth step is the remove obstacles. Obviously, change is not something that everyone is and acceptable by everyone. Keep asking: is anyone is resisting the change? And there are process or structures that are getting in its way. Put a place. Put a structure for the change and continually check for barriers. So, removing obstacles can empower the people who need to execute that vision. So some of the things what we can do are identify people who are resisting the change and help them see what they are needed and take action quickly, quick actions to remove those human or other barriers and recognize and reward the people for making that change that happen. And primarily because when I was in this project executing that change, and people were worried about, okay, am I going to lose the job because I'm doing this step of the process? And when this new process come into, what are the changes going to likely to happen? So there were some obstacles came up in that, and then we were we meet with them and then talk about the change and convince them this is what it is going to happen, and addressed differentially. Some of the people had to leave or because of this fear and all the changes. And the next step is to create short wins. Of course, nothing motivates more than success. So create short-term goals, and we have to come up with smaller targets each time and produce that results. So this is probably the thorough analysis and the potential pros and cons of the targets. And the next stage is about the build the change. How quick wins are the only beginning of what needs to be done to achieve the long-term change. So primarily that every win, analyze what went wrong, what needs to be improved. So that is kind of an agile process that, okay, you learn from something that you did, and then how do we improve on. So we had so we had to set some goals to continue build on the momentum, and so that it keeps it's moving as expected, as planned. And the last step is anchor the changes in the corporate culture. Make continuous effort to ensure that the change is seen every aspect of the organizations. So make sure leaders are continue to support the change. So we had stakeholder meetings and the executive SLT meetings on a weekly basis, so that they are all aware of this change and they understand, okay, here is our status on each of the stage. So again, create plans to replace key leaders of the change as they move on, or talk about the progress every time when we move to the next stage. So this is the primary the leading change quarter stage process. And here is the case study review that I like to primarily talk about how the results of the model and the lessons learned and the process. So here are the case studies that I have come up with at Deluxe Verify Valid Acquisitions. And here the first time implemented electronic checks, that is our success story. And the lessons learned, there were some communications issues initially, and that it is a tactic solution approach. Given there is a setting some aggressive goals because the leaders wanted to get that done soon enough, so it was not fully vetted solution. So there was some tactical approach has to be put in place, and the methodology is all about a peer interview. And when I compared this with the case study, we were successful able to apply quarter stages 1, 3, and 6. And for the next acquisitions, it is still in progress, and it's almost 95 percentage done. And based on our lessons learned, I mean, this is for the biggest challenge and the biggest revenue target is how to improve product lines from a customer satisfaction perspective. And we were able to successfully implement the 1, 3, and 7 stages of the case quarter study. And again, lack of support and planning. This was introduced in August, and they wanted to get it done by November. But we are still delayed. But of course, it's like 95 percentage of the stuff is in place, and still some things has to go through. So due to some technology constraints and some integration issues with that, and we hear the strengths and the weakness of the quarter model. And strength is quarter model is a very clear process, easy to follow. It fits well into all sizes of the organizations and classical hierarchies. And if everyone follows all the steps, and if they are all communicated, and definitely it's a guaranteed success. And the weakness is it's clearly a top down. It doesn't give any room for co-creation. So if something changed in between the process, it doesn't tell what the what needs to be done to take the corrective actions. That is kind of the weakness of the site. So here are some of the methodologies that I have used: online research journals, printed Google books, observation and personal experience. And I had some workshop, personal interview with the project managers and IT executive management leaders to just get their input into this project. And the limitations of the study, I just wanted to keep some of the focus. As I said earlier, that this is a focused, planned organizational change. In other words, it's an internal change to our organizations. So this is based on the self experience and my involvement with this project. That study did not include interview with the stakeholders and CEO. I can go up to the IT management leaders and not to the stakeholders, which if they are on the business side of the space. And another reason being the limited sources available for organizations that quarter model and other organizational models to execute to successfully merger acquisition. There is not much I was able to find with it. Here are some of the suggestions that we learned and that could help. So define a methodology to plan management and perform more upfront analysis. Like I said, the wasteboard six box model, we couldn't do much of it. So I was thinking when I gone through this exercise and the project research, it should have been nicely done with that approach. And be positive attitude, communication. That is the key. Keep communicating. Make everyone aware of this, and so that there are no surprises. And leadership support. Definitely, without their support, the project is going to fail. And engage people and engage all layers and every time and set realistic goals. So one of the changes that, as we said in our case study results and the lessons learned for the verify valid integrations, we set some aggressive goals. So we couldn't make it. So we put a tactical approach to address that problem. So we could have, if it's a plan and if it is goal, if the real set goals were realistic, then we could have done probably a long-term approach to that problem solution. So some of the conclusions that I like to throw. Let's talk about showing the implications on the 21st century workforce. Most importantly, organizations that had continued success recognize that it wasn't just this change or that change. It is the journey that matters. Business or organizations continue to look for opportunities for growth, revenue, sustainability, process improvements, etc. So the rapid technological change is expected to continue to propel demand for highly skilled workers to transition or transform organizations with advanced technology. Thus, maintaining a highly skilled worker is a challenge for organizations. Today, organizations are working in a distributed environment. And the services and the other forces to redefine their strategy. So I would probably conclude that connect the change to business strategy. Any good change effort results in an increased capacity to face the change in the future. People are the greatest asset in an organization. So make use of their knowledge, make use of their skill sets. How to address the resistance to change, because change is definitely a constant thing happening everywhere in our personal life, professional life. So how we keep ourselves and how do we manage and resist the change and make sure that this is the good thing and look at in a positive way. And manage people retention, employee engagement, and motivations. So there are some of the conclusions that I would throw as part of my project thing. The recommendations. So keep in mind that Winston Churchill quoted that to improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. A very, very great quote. So I think that is the recommendation, that we continue to change and we continue to spend our energy and effort to make things go and make things work and keep the momentum growing. So, as we all notice, that organizations, irrespective of any size, going through all sorts of changes due to pressure, market pressure, merger or acquisitions, internal changes, social or economical or environmental changes. So, uh, so this is the strategic imperative in today's global and fast-paced environment. So it is nothing. It's surprising. It's everywhere. It's going through the changes. So we need to adapt. We need to make ourselves adaptable so that we can accommodate the change and keep ourselves energized and continue with that approach. So there are some of the sound principles that I should highlight, so that we have to make sure we should not be forgetting those when dealing with some of the changes. Occupational structure analysis, some of the tools to measure organization change management success rate, how it's going, how are we doing today, how are we making the progress as we made one stage at one stage to the next stage. And we need to make sure that experienced leaders to manage the transactional stage. If the leader is not have enough experience, then that is going to fail. And also keep in mind to follow the best practices to reach a change mission, and conduct a risk impact analysis and each stage of the process, and define a strategy and an implementation plan to be successful, so that we all can do the better job. So here are some of the references that I like cover. And thank you so much for your time. And I know it has taken like 46 minutes, so I really appreciate everyone's time watching my presentation. Also, thank you so much, and thank you, Dr. D, for it's a wonderful experience for me and with our peer workers who going through the visual presentations in a virtual way. Thank you so much.